So I'm talking to Kanisha and Emily. Both are students of mine in some form of fashion. I've known both of them for a good while. And if you're hearing this right now, it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. However, I want to shed light on that, but also shed light on what happens after that could be a positive, right? I always like to say just because trauma happens doesn't mean we want to stay in trauma, and we never want to use that as a badge of honor, right? We want to use it as, hey, I can now do this for my kids or my peers or something like that. So we're gonna hear from these ladies. I'm gonna ask them questions that they have no idea about. So I'll start off with Emily. Emily, if you could travel anywhere in the world, no money limit for a month, where would it be and why?
I would travel anywhere with a beautiful beach just for solitude and to just be one with nature and just to get away from everybody and just in
any
the world
specific
and build.
any specific beach?
Um, well, I'm going to Puerto Rico next month, so I'll let you know. I'll get back to it. There
Nice.
are beautiful beaches in Puerto Rico that I would definitely would love to just seclude myself in one of those beaches.
Yo, Puerto Rico's like still one of my like life goals. That in Jamaica, like
Yeah.
no one knows me there. Kanisha, if you could live anywhere in the world for a year, rent free, work free, where would it be?
Italy.
And I like that. Why?
Italy. I just think like if you look at Italy, it's such a beautiful place. Like the landscape is so beautiful. And I feel like if I was set up shop in like some little villa or something like that, and I could look outside and it looks all beautiful and stuff, I feel like I would be so peaceful working and um feel like from what I've seen, like everybody's so nice and I love food. And they got authentic Italian food over there. So I would definitely get to experience that as well. And just the hospitality there and the people. So
Nice.
I would love to know that.
Speaking of experience, what would you guys say has been a good experience you've had this year so far? We're in October, so we're in the 10th month of the year. What's a good experience you've had so far? We usually only talk about like negative experiences, but what's a good experience you guys have had so far this year?
I can
Go.
go.
Yeah.
So I got a new job.
Nice. Nice.
So for me, that was a good experience. The last job I was in, I was there for 9 years, and I was just looking for a growth opportunity, and just everything seemed to be in alignment for this particular position. And it was actually at a company that I used to work for in the past, and they relocated out of state, and I couldn't go
Mm,
with them. And so now this job opportunity presented itself for me to go back there, and I did not have to move. I could be 100% remote. So now I work for them again and I work from my house. So
nice. You know what's cool about that? Like hearing like your story over the years, it's cool like staying like just consistent and patient because you had wanted to do that, remember during COVID, right?
hmm
But like
yeah,
now
they
to
I
see
was
like
at I was working from home during COVID, but then they pushed us back in the office from that other job, and it was mandatory. So, and then they kept increasing the days and stuff. So it became a struggle because I mean, I have an 11-year-old son who is a student athlete, and I got to drive all over the place and stuff. So, to be able to have found this opportunity, and it was referred to me actually, and it was referred to me by somebody who did not work there, and I still know a lot of people there. And it just everything fell in order, and now I get the flexibility that I need.
what would you say was a good experience for you this year, Emily?
So a good experience for me this year was I have lived in New Britain for as long as I can remember, and I finally moved out into a nicer town with a better school system for my son, and that just was just very refreshing to just get out of what I've always been comfortable with.
Nice, nice, nice. So what brings you guys to the show to shed light on a story, experience, and how have you built the strength to do that? So the simple question would be, what brings you on the show to share about domestic violence? We'll go, Kanisha.
So for me, I just feel like wanting to share my story is something that I kind of battled with for a while. But when I took a step back and looked at it, it's the same as anything else. Like if somebody is still battling with something and they feel like they're alone, they don't necessarily, they're like, how can I get through this? How can I overcome this? So if you're somebody who's gone through something and you've overcome it and you come out on the other side as a survivor and you're kind of thriving in life, that those people need to hear about that and hear that it is possible. So I feel like if you have a testimony, you should share it so that you can help somebody else get through something that they could still be struggling with.
When you say some people, say hi to Aaliyah. When you say some people, what do you mean some people need to hear your testimony? Is that people who may have suffered the same thing, or is it just people in general?
I think first and foremost, probably people who are still going through the same thing, because sometimes there's fear that's like wrapped around it. Like, I'm not going to leave because I'm afraid what's going to happen. Like, if I leave, or I don't want to tell anybody because I'm afraid what's going to happen.
Mhm.
And I just think that those people should know that, like, even though you're afraid, that your story still matters and you need to share it, because staying in the situation is a lot worse than coming out of it. And once you're out of it, there's still life on the other side of that.
Okay. And what about you?
I definitely agree. It's definitely just sharing my story in hopes that it'll give someone going through it the courage to speak on their story and to give someone else a voice. And just as she said, that there's just hope. You know, once you get out of it, there's hope. There's help. There's resources. It doesn't have to. This doesn't have to be your story. You don't have to be a victim. That doesn't, define you. Your whatever you're going through does not define you.
Do you guys find, like, we hear stories like back in the day that how could you let that happen or something like that? We know by now things could happen without you just knowing. Things could just slowly build up.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come to a place where you wanted to exit out of this situation, whatever it was?
I think for me in my situation, everything was just very behind closed doors. No one knew anything was going on. And then just one day, just a really physical situation happened, not in front of my children. But when I went inside, I didn't realize the physical part was just out there for display. And when my daughter saw me like that, that was for me a wake up call that I needed to get out, because there was no way I was going to continue as a mom trying to teach my daughter as best as I can, how men should treat you. And for me to stay in a situation like that after witnessing, the aftermath, that was just non-negotiable for me. I knew in that moment I had to go and do something.
Would you say as a mom that moms have to have that switch come on for them to actually leave, or is it do you think there's a way for them to leave before that switch is turned on?
Maybe it varies by situations because maybe sometimes it's hard and you literally can't leave because of whatever's going on. But for me, it was that switch. And then also, I have a child with the person. So that was a huge reason why I stayed. So it was just like a rock and a hard place. But once that switch came on and my daughter saw me and her reaction, I just knew. I said, I can't do this anymore.
What about you, Kanisha?
So for me, it was very similar. I tell people that a lot of times when we think about domestic violence, that we only think about the physical aspect, but it's really any type of abuse within the relationship, whether you're married or not. So it could be emotional, mental, like psychological, as well as physical, sexual, like all of those things. And for me, it kind of was like creeping up, like it started emotional, like, mental type things, like with words and things like that. And you kind of don't think anything of it. And you're like, you're just kind of going back and forth. And then it slowly started to escalate. And to her point, there was one day the switch went off because when he put his hands on me, my son did see it and was in the house, but I did not know at the time that it was happening. Like I knew he was in the house, but I didn't know that he was in the room. And it was like he was outside the room looking into where we were. But it was like there was a conversation going back and forth, and I was married to this person. So that's a whole nother layer of things. Like you're like, I don't get married to get divorced, and you're trying to like, figure out like all this stuff to kind of make stuff work, and you have a child and all that. But you also don't want that child to be in some type of toxic environment or see this type of behavior happening, especially for me, for a boy. Like, I don't want you to think that, oh, your dad did this, so it's okay if you did that to somebody like later on. So there was just one day where something snapped because I got hit in the face and I was caught very much off guard. And when it happened, it was like I felt like my life flashed before my eyes. And I just turned and I immediately picked up the phone and called the police. And I was like, no, because I was like, there were so many different thoughts going in my head. Like, if I stay here, does it now go to the next level and I don't get up next time? Or does it become, now I'm going to fight you and my son has both of his parents in jail? Like, we're not doing either one of those scenarios. So I had to, make a decision at that point, and I called the police. And it's definitely hard, but like I said, it escalated. But I also believe that there may have been some signs before that happened. And sometimes, even though we're like, why is this happening to me? I almost feel like if it didn't escalate to that, would I have left otherwise?
What do you feel were the signs that maybe you didn't see or you didn't pay attention to like prior?
I wouldn't say didn't see. I think more or less didn't pay attention to, or sometimes we try to make red flags white and think that we can help them.
Oh yeah.
So there was like trying to get like counseling involved and things like that. And there was other types of behavior going on. And like I said, prior to the physical, there was all this emotional and mental, and you can even say financial to some degree abuse that was going on. And I had talked to an attorney the year prior just to have a conversation, and I didn't proceed with anything. And probably 2 months before the first time he put his hands on me, I got a call from my attorney, and she like to me, it was out of the blue because I hadn't talked to her since December, and this is now June. And she was just like, so I know we had a conversation. I haven't seen anything being filed with the court or anything like that. So I was just checking in on you to see if everything's okay or whatever. And I told her like we were trying to work through some stuff and I wasn't exactly like ready yet. And, that I would keep in touch with her and all of that. And when I looked back on the situation, I was like, if I had talked to her in June, would we have even gotten to August? Like, it was almost like, hi, you talked to me, you wanted to do something, and you were like, never mind, we're going to stay and do this. So I'm saying, hi, do you still want to do this or not? And I'm like, no, I'm good or whatever. And stayed, and it hadn't escalated to that extreme yet. There was no like hit in the face or anything yet. So I look back and I'm like, was that like sign number one? And then the first push, the second hit, the like, like all of that, kind of going to work and acting like everything is fine and not telling family or anything like that about anything that's going on, like to Emily's point, like behind closed door stuff, and just trying to push through regardless. But I can tell you that during that time still, I documented everything that happened. Like after my attorney called me that day, anytime there was an incident, I documented the day and time that it happened. So when it finally got to that last straw, like at the end, when the police were like, has this ever happened before? I just handed them the journal.
That's really smart.
What was that feeling to have to hand over a journal of incidents to the police? What was that like?
Well, so before the police, when I was doing the journal, I initially, a little bit of fear came in because he had found it. And he was like, I saw you wrote all this stuff down. And now I'm like, I might lose my life now. I don't know what's going to happen now. Like, like when he just said, like, I saw that little, journal that you kept, and he kind of laughed about it. And to me, that's kind of frightening. Like initially, if you saw that stuff that I wrote and you're like laughing about it, like what's about to happen next? But he kind of laughed like it doesn't mean anything, or like you're not going to do anything. Like that's how he was laughing it off. And so I kept doing it. I moved the location, which I had it before, somewhere else where it couldn't be found. And like the day I handed it over, part of me was like, oh my God, this is crazy. But then the other part of me was like, I'm so glad I did this, because there basically was like a charge connected to each incident.
Wow.
So they put separate. So it was like I got like 3 different protective orders like sent to my house because they tagged one to each the 3 dates that were listed in there. And for me, it was also hard to hear, like when I handed that over and they were trying to ask me about like details for that current incident. My son was like, I saw it. And then he gave them like details, like picture for picture as to what happened. And that's how I knew he saw everything. Like he was like I saw mac and cheese fly in the air and all this stuff or whatever. And like the whole thing. And I feel like that was the part that was like the hardest for me to know that he like watched that play out.
What are you guys as moms? How do you explain to your kid what has happened?
So for me, as I mentioned before, this was all behind closed doors. There was actually recently, maybe 3 weeks ago, an incident that happened in front of EJ, and he unfortunately witnessed it, and it was hard. It was hard to talk to him about it, but it was also a blessing in disguise because his dad is just very inconsistent. So it was a blessing in disguise because I was able to just use that and just speak to him in ways that he understands based on what he saw that I needed to, keep him safe and make sure everything was safe. So it was very hard. It was very hard to speak to him about it. But in my situation, it was definitely a blessing in disguise. But that's one of the hardest things to do, to just have to. I think that knowing your child witnessed something like that between their parents or, to their parents, that for me was harder than the actual incident itself.
Oh, because of what you think?
Because, my child is a very happy child. He's very happy. He's very smart. But he was asking, I'm just going to be very honest about what happened. He was asking his dad, "Stop, you're hurting mommy," is what he came out. And the way his voice sounded, the tone of his voice, the concerned look on his face, that to me, like, I will never forget that because I've never heard him sound like that. I've never heard him concerned. Like, his job is to just be a kid, and I tell you all the time, through it's his world. I just live in it. I go with his flow, and
That's all. I think it's all of us as parents.
Yeah, right? So to see that switch like that, and he couldn't even put his seatbelt on in the car because he was visibly shaking. Like, that was, to me, the hardest part about everything. At that point, like, I didn't even care about my pain and what I went through. I was just focused on him, just because you don't know later on down the road what that's going to do to him. So that to me was just the hardest part out of everything.
And we pray that these kids become advocates for not just what they saw, but they become advocates for just people in general, to not let that happen. Kenesha, what would you say for you? How do you break that to your son? Like, how do you explain what happened?
So for me, it was probably a little bit harder because at the time he was 5. And so he was in kindergarten. And there was, like, for me, it was very difficult because he didn't always want to talk about it. And a lot of times people were like, "Oh, kids won't understand," or whatever. And for me, it was, he absolutely understood why his dad was not in the house anymore. It was more of the choice of not seeing your kid after. So he was like, "I get why he's not here anymore, but I don't get why I don't see him." And that was the issue for him. And there was a lot of rage inside because my child was always like quiet but happy, always likes to play, loves his friends and all that, but there was a lot of rage inside that I had to deal with behind closed doors. When you say rage, I'm talking about like want to fight me physically, like rage, and like all of a sudden they become like super strong and you don't even know where that came from. And therapy is what I had to tie into it. So I got him a therapist and he worked with the therapist. We worked together. Like, I was seeing a therapist, he was seeing a therapist. I would come in at the beginning of the meetings, like with the therapist. Sometimes they would have off-site meetings, like especially at a younger age, like maybe they would go to a bookstore and make it seem like as like a little informal to help them open up and talk a little bit, or maybe they play a game first and then just have a conversation, like anything to get them talking. So for him, he expressed himself a lot through drawings. So even if he didn't necessarily say it out loud, he might draw about it.
Mm.
So there might be a picture where, it was three people in the picture, and there was like a woman and a little boy, and then there was a man to the side, and the little boy and the man were like reaching their hands out, but they weren't touching. And then when you ask him about the picture, he would later explain it, and he would say like he was a little boy and the guy was his dad, and he was trying to reach out and grab his hand, but they couldn't get to each other.
Mm.
And a lot with colors as well. Like they would say that, he's using a lot of red and orange and black and stuff when he draws, which are like rage colors. And after he had went through therapy for a while, you could start to see like when he drew and he was coloring, there was like all the colors, like more blue and green and yellow and all that stuff, because his mood started to shift. And we started a whole thing like, if you don't want to talk about it, you can draw it. I had to communicate with his teachers so that they knew like if he was having a moment, like to give him a second in the corner, or give him a period where he can go and draw or write. He had a little journal in his bag. Like, if you don't want to talk about it, at least write about it. Like,
Mhm.
get it out of you in some like way, shape, or form. And then if you want to talk to me about it, we can. If you don't, or if you want me to read it, but you want me to read it later, like whatever you want to do with this, once you put it in there, like you just let me know. And he usually would let me read it, sometimes not with him around. But if he got upset, sometimes he would just be like, Mom, I need a minute. And like he would go to his room and take a minute. And then he'd be like, Mom, can I talk to you? And then we like have a conversation. So I just try to now still make sure like any lines of communication are like open and things like that. So if anything ever comes up or he wants to talk about anything, that he still knows that he can openly have those conversations.
How do you guys now? You guys have both become committed to your own personal fitness journeys and things like that. How does that help you?
I can go. For me, that's like my mental refuge, like like my safe space. And I would have to say the funny thing about this is that a lot of the incidents increased when I started my fitness journey.
Wow.
So during the time that I was with this person, I gained 100 pounds. And so when I started to go back on that journey, it's because one day I saw a picture of myself and I was like, who the freak
Pictures
is
will
this?
do it. Pictures will do it. Yeah. Yo, pictures will
And
do it.
I was like, who is this though? Like I felt like I didn't even recognize myself. And like that's a shell on the outside of the person that's like actually like in there. And I was just like fighting to come out of it. And I feel like when I started that journey, during that, that's probably part of what helped me get stronger to say, forget this as well. And now, if you want to fight me, you can try, but we're not going to go there.
It'll be a bad, it'll be a bad
ending now.
I almost got hit by one of them punches, so it'll be a bad, long day. It'll be a bad day.
He don't want a 3, but or a 4. So it became an outlet for me, and like my basement is now basically like a fully equipped gym at this point, and it's like my safe space. And so I always say, like, when I go down there, like whatever's going on, leave that up there, come down and do what I got to do. And whatever music you want to put on and whatever, whatever the task of the day is, like I'm gonna get it done. But I just felt like with every lift or every punch or whatever, like I got some of my power back.
Yeah, I like that.
And I was just like, there's like I can't imagine not doing it at this point because it's so like ingrained in everything that I do every day. Like it just became something that, I tried to start off doing. Like I started with CrossFit, and I like when I first started that, I was like, there's no way I can do this. Like my friend was like, come down to CrossFit. And I was like, who come down to CrossFit? Like I can barely do one burpee. Like, what are you talking about? Ever? And then to get to a point where you got to do a workout like a hero wad with like 60 burpees in it, and you do them, I'm like, oh, like like you feel like this a sense of accomplishment that your body can do things that you tried to tell it couldn't, but it could. And I feel like I always say, like, if you shift the mind, like the body will follow. So because I was telling myself I can't do these things, that's why I couldn't do them. So if I shifted the mindset that I can do this and I can accomplish this, then your body will follow that. Because a lot of times we're thinking we're fatigued and we're tired, but our body's, really not that tired. And I feel like my son like watches me now, like do this every day. So for him, he's like, Mom, I'm going to go do a workout. And it got to a point where he wanted a little workout like after school. And we were writing his workouts on the whiteboard and stuff like that too, to get it done. So I feel like it also helps give them an example to follow.
And it gives him the ability to see the other side,
right,
which is rebuilding. What about you, Em? What got you committed to your fitness journey?
Kanisha just like touched on something that was key. Looking at old pictures of myself and not even being able to recognize who that person was. That right there, and then just being able to lift weights that I didn't think I could lift. That was just very empowering. And same thing she said, the more I just kept on with it, the more you regain your power back. And just retraining your brain, kind of rewiring your brain, to I got this shit. I'm gonna lift that weight. I'm not gonna drop it. Like I got it, and the more you shift your thoughts and shift your mindset, that's a game changer right there. That's a huge game changer. And that basically, like, I can't imagine, like, I may take a little break from my workouts, but I jump right back in because it's just part of a routine.
Now, for anybody who listens to this wasn't a forced conversation. Like, it wasn't forced for them to come on the show. We were actually finishing a boxing workout, and they came on. Both of you guys smile a lot more. You guys are laughing a lot more. How did you come to a point where you weren't going to let pain become your identity?
For me, it took a lot of therapy and a lot of, therapy helps, but you just have to put in that inner work, right? It took a lot of inner work, and I'm still working on myself. Since the situation happened, I've been in therapy going on 3 years now. And it's a constant work in progress, but you just have to kind of just like really, really, really tap in and do the inner work, because there's nothing cute about going through this healing journey. It's a lot of truths that you reveal about yourself. And
healing's not cute.
No, it's not. It's not linear either.
Not linear.
At all.
That part.
Not.
You just have to just tap into your truth and just tap into like everything and just take a good hard look at yourself. put in that work and just follow suit, because you're not gonna, once I did that, and through that, I also regained my power back, standing in my truth, just all of that. And now I'm able, like, I love the fact that I'm able to just like smile and be happy, genuinely happy.
Yeah.
It's a great feeling. It's a really great feeling.
What about you?
So to touch on some of the stuff that Emily was saying also, I like the self work, the inner work, like is really important. And I feel like going back to like people experiencing like other trauma and stuff like that, especially if you experience it in childhood, that a lot of times if it's not dealt with then, it comes into adulthood.
Majorly.
And
Majorly.
and it shows up in different ways for different people, and it could be all different kinds of trauma. But the funny thing about it is, I remember I was having a conversation with my mom about this situation, and she kind of brought some stuff up about my dad. And when she was done, I basically was like I sat back and I felt like it was so weird to think that I didn't really know my dad, but the way that she described certain things was, although I didn't know him, I married him, a version of him. And so when she was telling the story, I was just sitting there like, what? So it's almost like subconsciously, like, like even though I may not have remembered like anything or whatever, that somehow that this is like the direction that you ended up in. But I think that I was also one of those people that I experienced a lot of different things in life prior to this, things that probably people would either have become drug addicts, alcoholics, committed suicide, whatever the case may be. But we can go from childhood all the way up through now. And I felt like I learned to smile through pain. And I was always the funny person. Like I could always make you laugh. I always come, they talk about how beautiful my smile was and all that stuff. So I was always smiling. So I felt like people didn't really know if something was going on because I was always the one smiling and always the one like making everybody smile. But I felt like when I did the work, it was no longer just a smile on the outside. There was one on the inside that was coming through to the outside. So that's why it seemed bigger and brighter and more genuine and things like that. So I think people take for granted the amount of work that you have to put in. And sometimes people go to therapy and they're like, I'm healed. And I feel like healing is a process. You're not automatically healed tomorrow. Like, I'm going to go to therapy for a week and I feel better. So it's all done. You probably didn't even get to everything that you need to get to. You probably just talked about the current incident that you went through, but maybe there's some things that happened along the line that put you in this incident in the first place. Like, what's the root cause? Like, pull back some other layers as to what else was going on at the time. So I just feel like saying that I'm going to make myself a priority and that I matter and that I want to be around for my son and for his kids and all that stuff or whatever and live my best life. Regardless, I just wanted people to know that like I'm not done until I'm dead. So whatever I gotta do to keep going and to like pay it forward or to help anybody else, I'm gonna do. But it definitely takes a lot of work to get to this space, and you're never finished. Like and nobody's perfect. So it's always going to be like, if you have progress, that's awesome. That's for me, that's the goal. You always want progress because we're never going to be perfect.
I want to touch on something, two things. I do life coaching where I help coaches. So I coach for Coach Kelly, and we help coaches become better coaches and stuff like that. And one of the key things that we always talk about is finding out this person's like underlying issue. Like, what's the real issue that's actually prohibiting the growth and stuff like that. So with the whole healing process, I want to also make sure people understand that what we see on social media will make you feel that you're not progressing, when in reality, you're making a lot of progress. Like, so everyone was like, like self help, healing, got my mug, and all that stuff. Like, that stuff's cute, but it's like, it's not going to actually like produce growth, like real growth. Growth doesn't feel good. Like, we've all have kids. When kids are teething, it's one of the most painful things ever, and you can't help them. As much oral gel and everything you give them, they still have to go through that part. But I want to help shed light, and you guys can help after too, where we look at this healing journey and we take rest stops to celebrate how far we've come, even if it's only a day. Because I think people won't heal if they look at social media as the measuring like rod, because that's not what it is. And it doesn't look good. Today, I was crying today driving about something that I talked to my therapist about 4 years ago. Like, just right out of the, you'd be like, what just happened? But you have to learn to celebrate along the journey, so you're not overtaken by old emotions and old stories that you used to tell yourself. So how would you guys advise, how would you guys give light to anybody who's on a healing journey?
So I'll go
Okay.
if you want. You can go. Wait.
Go ahead.
So I totally agree with you, Drew, and I feel like if somebody's journey, like if them looking at social media is hurting them, then sometimes maybe you need to take a break from it every now and then, or not scroll all day long, and or give yourself a time limit. I'm only going to look on 10 minutes today, like, or whatever the case may be, or I'm going to go off for 24 hours, like whatever may be, especially if you're in a moment, because you'll go down like a rabbit hole and things like that. But what I know, what helped me and what I've told people before as well, because to Emily's point, healing, it's not linear. I would say that what people also don't understand is grief, and that grief is associated with any type of loss. So it doesn't have to be because somebody passed away. If you lost your marriage, if you lost a friend, like a friendship broke up or something like that, or lost a job, like, people are allowed to grieve those things. And the grieving process goes through all these different emotions. So you can feel sad one day, you can feel depressed one day, you could just randomly start crying about something one day because you're grieving that moment. So for me, this person, like, I met him when I was 20. When we got divorced, I was 39. That was literally half of my entire life.
Wow.
So to break that up, that's a grieving process. So it's like somebody that was around for 50% of my entire life, especially like all my 20s, all my 30s almost, I now have to say, like, they're no longer there. So I might go through, and then now it's a divorce and you have a child involved. So I might go through all the patterns of grief, and that might be up and down. And there might be triggers that are associated with that you kind of have to also become self-aware of and show yourself grace a lot of times, because you're still grieving. Like, there are people who have lost their parents and years could go by And that doesn't mean like they don't miss them anymore or they
Yeah.
don't grieve them anymore. They could be fine going through life a couple of days and all of a sudden might start crying like, oh my God, I missed my mom today. And the same thing can happen in any kind of situation where there's like a loss of someone. You could one day be in the car and think about a moment and then start, crying about that because you're feeling those emotions all over again. Like, and to the point with like triggers and stuff like that. There was a moment the other day where, for those of you who know that Ashanti song, Rain on Me, I've heard that song so many times in my life and I didn't think anything of it. Like, it's just a song or whatever. And then the video came on of like her going through what she was going through with her man and then ex or whatever at the time or whatever. And it was like a situation, a domestic type of situation. When I saw it on the screen recently, like I hadn't seen it in a long time, but when I saw it on the screen recently, I was like, I can never watch that video again.
Mm.
Like it triggered me. And I was like, I don't ever want to see that video again. But now I know that, and I know that's the feeling that came up in regards to it. So I just would say, like, you have to show yourself grace and know that it's still a loss and you could be grieving and that process can look different for different people. And as long as you don't stay in one emotion too long, like you will get to the other side.
Love it. Love it. What about you, Em?
Can you repeat the question?
So what would you what would be how would you shed light on another female or male that
Okay.
that is in this healing journey?
Okay. So definitely I'm gonna repeat this again because it's key. Healing is not linear.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny to me when I hear people say, oh, like he said, he kept the little cups, I'm healed, therapy for a week. I'm going on 3 years, still in therapy, still learning about myself. So it's a process. It's a process, a like very long process. Just be very kind to yourself. Give yourself a lot of grace. Really, really put in the work because that's the only way you're going to just get to the other side. Something that, so when I first got involved with therapy, I wasn't happy with my first therapist. I just felt like I was not connecting with the therapist. And I went therapist shopping, like hopping for a while until I found someone I was able to connect with. Don't be afraid to ditch your therapist and find another one because that's important too. You have to be comfortable with your therapist. It is just don't compare yourself to anyone else on social media, like you said, because you don't know how far along in their journey they are in, and they're sharing their story, and rainbows and unicorns and peace signs and zen, and you don't know like how far into their journey they are in. Just take it day by day. Give yourself a lot of grace and be very kind to yourself. That's like the main takeaway because when you're going through the situation that you're going through in regards to domestic violence, I know I beat myself up a lot because I was one of them females where I just never thought that's never gonna happen to me. I could never. And then it happened to me. And then I beat myself up a lot over it. So just know that in the moment you're going through, you're surviving in a way that the only way you know how to, and you just kind of have to be kind to yourself and not beat yourself up over that. Be kind to yourself. You were surviving and you did what you had to do. You know better, you do better, and you just keep working and moving forward and just keep working on yourself. Go through your emotions, feel your emotions, don't sit in them too long. I think the beautiful thing now, I feel like I'm at a point in therapy, in my healing journey where I used to let my emotions get the best of me and I would react on my emotions. And now, like, I love when things happen now because I love that now I can just sit down and just like break everything apart and just figure out like what's what. Now I understand why people react, do the things that they do. And in turn, that helps me just keep my cool and just react appropriately, as opposed to, you let your fight or flight take over. And it's not healthy to stay in that fight or flight all the time. The numbers to your body physically, it's not good. So just get the help that you need. There's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of help. If you're afraid to ask for help, ask somebody else, ask a close friend, and just get the help. Get the help, and the main takeaway is just don't compare your journey to anyone else's, because everybody's story is different and everybody is on a different level of their journey than you are.
I love it. I think something that my therapist told me, I was in a session and I was like, she was like, I'm so proud of you. My therapist always tells me two things, right? She always tells me, Drew, make sure you be good to yourself. And she always tells me, which breaks me into pieces, I'm proud of you. And that's something that I never really heard ever. So we were finishing the session and I was laughing and I was like, yo, I don't know how you dealt with me when I first started because I just felt like I was a mess. I was a mess. And the look she gave me, she stopped me. She said, you were never a mess. That message to people, you're not a mess because something has happened to you. Like, I think has to be driven home in our heads that I'm not a mess because something has happened, or like Kanisha said, I didn't know I married the same type of person like my dad, and I didn't know. That was one of my main reasons for getting into therapy. Is if I don't do this, Aaliyah's gonna marry who I am right now, or Aaliyah's going to get my habits and my trauma if I don't handle this now. So the message that I want to leave with the people who hear this or see this is you're not a mess, right? Even when you're getting the help, you're not a mess. Like you're a person, you're amazing, you're worthy, you're lovable, you're not a mess. And to hear these stories and to hear that you guys have fought through these things is amazing because some women now will have a reason to get out, and some women will have a reason to say, hey, even though this is a journey, after these things happen, like they gave me some ideas, some tools to actually get past the pain. So I'm glad that you guys decided to come on the show and talk about that. And you guys both know, Jamaica and I, we have a nonprofit where we deal with women on sexual assault, and we see it rapidly when we always let them know you are worthy, like you are lovable. Don't let social media become your like Em said. Don't let social media make you compare yourself to somebody else's journey. Lastly, and then we'll wrap up. I took a yoga training years ago, and it was you have to do 200 hours. And every Friday and Saturday and Sunday, I sat in that room from it was at least 4 hours each time. And the instructor who led it was like the owner. You would think when people think yoga, they think, oh, it's peace. It's like Emily said, peace signs and yoga tea and all that stuff. She had never really dealt with her childhood stuff. And it came up every session.
Oh.
And I'm thinking, hold up, brother, you're the leader. Like, we don't mind holding space for nobody, but I'm like, you're in the industry where you guys
Yeah.
are making it seem that like everything is okay if we just sit on this mat. And it let me see that no matter who you are, you got to work through your stuff. So where, if people
Yeah.
wanted to give me one resource that people could go to get help, if you guys know, we'll put it in the links. Like, what's a resource that they could, or a place or a website that they could go to find additional help?
I know there's, definitely the domestic violence hotline that's available for people. Um, I would just, it's so funny because I was actually just looking at this the other day when I was having a conversation with someone about this, and it made me a little sad because they said that they've been experiencing high wait times. And I was like, what does that mean for the world? Like if somebody's calling a hotline and you're experiencing longer than normal wait times, that means there's more people calling the hotline and waiting. But
Yeah.
it also means that if there's somebody that does need to get through on the hotline and they have to wait on hold for like 10 minutes that they don't have, what does that mean too?
Mm,
So, I mean, there's definitely that available. There's also some local resources, like, depending on where people live. Like I know there's the network that's near me that helps victims as well. But yeah, that if you need somebody to talk to and maybe you're not in like a life or death right now like situation, but you want to call somebody and help, I know that hotline is available.
nice, nice.
Definitely the people that I was really in contact with the most was the Office of Victim Services, like the advocates,
Hmm.
domestic violence advocates. They help, and I'm trying to find a website now. But I know I remember going on a website, and I thought it was pretty cool because they had like safety exit features where you can, if you're like browsing online, and let's say your abuser comes in, you can tap anywhere on the screen, and it'll just like exit. And I can't find it. But definitely, domestic violence hotline, um, Office of Victim Services. Those were my main go-to people, and of course my therapist.
I love it. I
Yes,
love it.
the
I love it.
therapist.
Definitely.
Yes.
Shout out to therapists.
Yes,
And
my
Drew,
therapist.
Drew, to your point, I know you brought up like your nonprofit and stuff like that that helps deal with women with like sexual assault. So I just want to plug that in here as well, that a lot of times we think that if we're in a relationship or we're in a marriage that you can't be a victim of sexual assault, but you very well can be. And things like marital rape and stuff like that is real.
Mm-hmm.
So if you did not consent to something and you're in a relationship or in a marriage or anything like that, that is still sexual assault.
Mhm.
Exactly. That could bring us down a rabbit
And
hole.
that, yep,
The
I
amount of
know.
the
And
amount
I
of
can talk about that one too.
the amount that may have to be a part two. No, but
Seriously.
I'm grateful that you guys were able to come on here and give some light, help people see this, and I think the power of being able to just hear it at your own pace, own speed, is very, very beneficial. So, last question of the day. Let's say you were given $1 million and you had to spend it in a week. What would you spend it on, Kanisha?
Of course you said my name. Didn't I just talk? But anyway, in a week. Whew. Um, let's see. If I had to spend it in a week, I think that I would pay off all my debt first because it ain't near $1 million. So I know that I could pay all of that off and not have any bills really, and still have a lot of money to play around with. Um, I would take my trip to Italy. It might not be for a year. However, it could be for a little while and I wouldn't have to worry about those expenses. I would probably get a housekeeper.
Amen.
Amen.
So I don't have to do any of the stuff up in here, and I could take a chunk of it and save it and probably have her salary for a few years and not have to worry about that. And I would invest some money because that's always a great thing to do for the future, because if you have future goals that you want to do or things you want to do within your business and grow it that way, to be able to have some of that money still working on the side and growing is a huge thing, because you never know where the road might lead you in the future. And then I would give to some charitable foundations that mean something to me. And I would also keep some money aside for my son and his future. And this boy talking about he want to go to a prep school for high school, and that costs like college money. So we have to save that as well. But yeah, and then any other type self-care that I want to do, and day trips and stuff like that. I like day trips. I like days when work is closed and daycare is not, so you can go on child-free trips and experience that, because I don't have a lot of family like around here. So it's nice to be able to like take those moments and enjoy time and reset and recharge.
I love it. Emily, how about you? Given $1 million, have a week to spend it.
Oh my gosh, I would definitely pay off debt. I have 2 daughters in college right now, so definitely that's being paid off. I would invest, like Kanisha said. I would start a business that involved my children so that their finances can grow. Take a nice vacation. Yeah, yeah. Treat myself, treat my kids, do all the things that would take me forever to do if I didn't have $1 million in a week.
Treat yourself.
Treat yourself.
No, seriously. Yeah.
Yourself.
Treat yourself. Treat yourself. Well, guys, I'll see you when I see you. Everybody else who's listening to the podcast, I do have a plug. Something that we are rolling out. It'll probably be out by the time mid-November happens. We are forming real life Bible studies where we talk about real life issues and we use God's word to help us heal inwardly. And those are going to be pretty cool because they're going to be where you can come on live on Zoom or you can listen to the recording. But there's also going to be now a portion where you can do the study at your own pace. So a way for anybody who wants to learn about the word of God, who wants to grow in it, who I would even open it to an atheist. I'm not opposed to anybody who wants to learn, grow, and spec. So that will be in the link. That should be rolling out November or mid-November. Emily and Kanisha, I'll see you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Later, guys.